Good afternoon, everybody. So as Eliza said, I am Nick Fuller. I'm the director of the product team within IDBS responsible for the next generation of the Polar platform. So I'm going to take you today on a little bit of a journey. So we're going to have to use our imaginations slightly, but it's all rooted in where we are going in the future. So things that we are building actively today and things that we are absolutely aiming to achieve in the future. Now you notice on my first slide there is a QR code. This is also on my last slide as well. So if you would like, there is just a 5-question survey. They're really short, it's multiple choice, it's easy. But the idea of this survey is to gather from people like yourselves what your current experiences of AI and similar emerging technologies are in your organization today, to help us understand if our vision, our strategy is aligned to where you are today as a sort of representative group of our customers. Now, as I said, today I'm going to take you through some things that haven't been commercially released, are not available to buy yet. So therefore, similarly with Scott this morning, when he went through our strategy and roadmap, I just have to remind you, please, these things are not commercially available. Please don't make purchasing decisions on those. Our roadmap obviously could change. Our priorities could change, although I think we'd be a little bit mad to abandon all of the new technologies that we're talking about, but obviously priorities can change. And please respect your confidentiality agreement with us. Please don't screenshot this, try and recreate the things that I'm going to show you, etc. Now, the journey we're going on today is really about starting with how we see the challenges that the industry and our customers are going through. This is based on extensive customer engagement that we've been doing over the past 18 months to 2 years around how our customers are looking to adopt new technologies and what the key challenges are for them today. We'll then start looking at IDBS's proposed solutions for this, how our next generation evolution of the Polar platform will support our customers in solving these challenges. And I've got some demonstrations, because we all like a little video. I've got some demonstrations that will show you the progress that we have made. So the videos that I will show you are not really future-facing. These are not things that are going to be available in 3-5 years' time. These are things that are actively under development today and will be available very soon. I'll then talk briefly to the roadmap and vision. And I say briefly because Scott's taken you through the roadmap, the overarching vision. This will really focus down on some of the new next generation features that we are talking about for 2026. And then, of course, if there's time, and I'm not known for my brevity, so I'll try and be as brief as I can. We all want to have lunch at some point, but there may be some time for Q&A. If there is not much time for Q&A, I'm here all day, so please come and find me, ask me any questions, and there is the questions email address which is up on the boards at the sides if you would like to send some questions over. But as I mentioned, that survey QR code is on my last slide as well. I'll leave it up at the end for you to be able to ask any questions that you've got. So in terms of the problem that the industry and our customers are facing today, it's a problem actually that I feel personally all of the time as well in the software industry. Everything is moving so quickly. New things are coming out every week. What was a trendy buzzword 2 weeks ago has been replaced by a new trendy buzzword. So when we're looking at technologies, we're trying to really make sure that we are trailblazers. We're leading the way in our industry for using those technologies the best that we can for our customers. And our customers see similar pressures. They're being asked to adopt new technologies, work faster, deliver more, but they're also being asked to do it with data integrity, compliance, the importance of ensuring that what you're doing is safe for patients ultimately. So we feel that with all these movements and all the things going on in our industry, we need to make sure that what we're doing around AI is compliant, is trustworthy, is going to be something that you are comfortable putting your name to when you use our platform. So that brings me to what we are aiming for with our vision for our next generation platform. Now, this might seem highly simplistic or, maybe even aspirational. But what we want is that the data that you are supplying, you're generating every day, teaches the system something. So the next time that you do it, it's faster. It can be assistive. It can predict what might happen. It can tell you what to do next. Taking things like AI, which is just one of the many tools. I won't say that. I won't say AI too many times. I'll try not to. One of the many tools we have available to us today that can really bring together that trusted data platform within IDBS Polar, the execution layer for your science, and use that AI with a governed AI to be able to bring you the results that you need in that trustworthy way, speeding up that lab loop, allowing you to generate your results faster, glean better insights, make faster decisions. And our commitment at IDBS is, as a company that is rooted in scientific data and compliance, we know that our customers need to trust us with their data. So our commitment to our customers is that we do not use your data to train models that are used by other customers, for example. The data is yours. We're committed to delivering a compliant, auditable, explainable AI layer into our platform. And we really want to focus on the value first. So we know there's a huge amount of hype. We know there's a little bit of a race to be the first people to do these things. But we want to make sure that we're taking a measured and trustworthy approach to get there, so that what we end up with in production is something that you can use and you can trust. So when I talk about the lab loop, I've got a slightly reimagined lab loop here. It's a bit elliptical. But I'm hoping the parts of this lab loop resonate with you, regardless of what stages in the drug development lifecycle you're working in. From early planning, hypothesizing, understanding what you might need to do next, through to designing an experiment, designing how you will carry out that particular workflow, executing your experiments, capturing your data. And we've had a couple of talks today that have focused really heavily on the value of that structured data capture at the point of execution, that contemporaneous capture. And then analyzing your data to make faster decisions. And our aim around the lab loop is to bring you at least a 50% reduced burden of effort. And we're doing that through the platform that we are evolving today, through the next generation of Polar, for which my team, and there's a lot of us really, are responsible for delivering to you. So the next generation platform, when I talk about that, what I mean by next generation is how are we taking Polar into the future to support our customers' long-term ambitions, particularly around data and AI. And we all talk about the importance of a data foundation, and we really can't underestimate that. And once again, it's been mentioned a few times already today. But we can't get away from that hard work, and it is hard work. Cleaning up all of the data mess that's accumulated over decades is hard work, but we can't get away from it, because whatever we try and do with that data, if we don't clean it up, is not going to give us that level of benefit, trustworthiness, compliance that we need. So what IDBS is building is a foundational data platform, which is an evolution of our existing data backbone. And this will bring the ingestion of your unstructured data vectorized, available for things like the two-letter acronym that I said I wasn't going to say loads of times, but that we all use every day, okay? That data available to ask natural language questions, to be able to summarize, tell you about trends, talk about your unstructured data alongside your structured data. Things like lineage and genealogy, they've been talked about today as well. Similarly, data models. That unification of your data layer, so all of the data from across the IDBS ecosystem is in one place. And of course, we want this to be compliant by design. That is IDBS's that's our thing, right? If we know anything, we know about compliance. On top of that, we have our execution layer, so our modular workflow. And I, within IDBS for quite a long while, have been a huge advocate and proponent for making our workflows simpler, easier to build, easier to maintain, and to deploy. And the sessions we've had today show the power of Advance and the spreadsheets that we have today. But I think it also doubles down on a place where we can improve on that, and we can provide a solution that will live side by side with advanced spreadsheets, And our modular workflow solution is that, being able to build your workflows from reusable components that can be validated, be able to execute them in an intuitive, fast way, be able to gain things like a structured export, which you can compare, do differences on easily, be able to recreate those workflows programmatically, bringing ultimately increased flexibility to our scientists, so they are not feeling like, to Sean's point earlier, the workflow is telling the scientist what to do, but the scientist should be telling the workflow what to do. And of course, on top of that lives this AI layer, where we want to be able to be an assistant to the scientist in the lab. So not replacing the human, not trying to do what the human does best, but actually being an assistant to them, so we can make their job easier, help them work more efficiently. And I think Brad's presentation just now proves that smart thinking, implementing technology in the appropriate way brings those benefits to our customers. We really want to help with the AI layer, first and foremost in iterations. So we're looking at things like read-only access to data for search and summarization, for example. Things that today take a really long time. If you're looking for something that you're not really sure what you're looking for, and then you need to find it, you need to make sure you've got all of the relevant data, and then you have to be able to summarize and understand that data quickly. It can take a very long time. And Brad talked about having SharePoint and Excel files and things like that. That is the environment that we're all living in. That's the reality of the work that's been going on over the past decades. And we need to be able to make good use of that data and be able to gain those insights. So by being able to ingest that unstructured data into our data platform, we make it available for those AI use cases. Summarize these experiments. What did I learn from this study? What should I do better next time? And of course, it wouldn't be an AI conversation without using the 3 letters MCP. They're actually 3 letters that I'm getting a little bit tired of, if I'm honest. We've been talking about it so much. But Model Context Protocol, okay, the way that you can connect AI into other tools. And one of those tools may well be IDBS Polar. So we are working to bring connectivity of your AI tools into our platform so that you can use your own LLM if you wish. So you may have your own internal trained LLM that's trained on your data. Bring that in, connect it to the platform. You may want to use your own interface. So some people prefer to use Claude over ChatGPT, for example. But some people might have a command line interface they want to use to ask some natural language questions. Bring that to Polar as well. So it's this dual approach of us bringing an embedded AI tool into our platform for things like search and summarization, your lab assistant, but also allowing customers to bring their own, because we know you've got your own data and AI strategy. And we also know that our data is a part of your much broader ecosystem and a lot of data that doesn't exist inside our platform. So where have we got to? What is our progress on this? Is everything I'm saying just, 5-year vision and, dreams that I have sometimes? I mean, is that as well, actually? Unfortunately, I think this morning the jet lag got me and I woke up at 2 a.m. and I had actually been dreaming about some of the MCP stuff that we're doing, which, yeah, is wonderful. But I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you where we've got to. So the idea is, how much progress has IDBS made and when are we actually releasing this? So I want to start with a few short videos, and I say a few because I want to break those videos down into how we're going to help accelerate each part of that lab loop. So your planning, your hypothesizing, your experiment generation, your workflow design, through to capturing the data, analyzing the data, and then informing the next cycle of that lab loop, your next planning of your experiment. So we're going to start with something that we have developed internally within IDBS, which is an embedded AI assistant. So within IDBS Polar, we are currently working on name TBC, so I'll call it Polar AI for the time being. We are working on our own internal AI interface, and this allows you to unlock the power of your ELN data, including your unstructured data. So all those files we talked about, like Excel and Word and PowerPoint and your text items in your experiments, available for search and summarization through this. So this video I will show you Watch out for the fact that, we've got citations, we've got relevance scores, links back to the experiments and the files that the data came from, so it's traceable. There is that governance in there already. And of course, this is polar data. This is not data from the wide world. This is not from the internet. This is purely looking at the data that you have within your polar system. So I'll play the video, hopefully. We ask a natural language question. I appreciate it's very small, use your imaginations. We're asking about a biomarker for PSA. So we're saying, what would I need to do to improve my experiment methodology around the biomarker for prostate cancer, essentially. And it spits out an answer based on everything you've done so far. So it says to you, well, based on your existing data, you could do these things. Here's a hypothesis for you. And that is based on the scientific context within polar. So this is not just a generic AI slop answer you might get if you just opened up ChatGPT and said, how would I do a study on PSA? This is based on your data. Right? It's based on what you have learned previously. And the responses here, as you can see, or partially see, I'll tell you they do exist, is they are links. They have relevance scores. If you click the links, they take you back to the specific files or documents that are being referenced. So you get the traceability of that context, how it came to that answer. It's not made up. It's not rooted in hallucinations. You can see, I have 100% relevance score for these documents. These have been included in the decision making. So that's sort of step one in our lab loop. How do I come up with a plan or a hypothesis? What do I need to test? And how do I make sure I'm doing it well? Then we have this concept of our execution layer, this workflow builder. So I said earlier that I wax lyrical about this all the time. It's something that I feel very strongly about. I guess before I play that video, tiny bit about me, not to become narcissistic about it, but I will talk about myself for a little while. I have worked at IDBS since 2012, so it's a long time, very large proportion of my life, because I am very young. But basically, during that time, I've been in consultancy. I was in the professional services team for the best part of 10 years of that time. So I have implemented our solution to a vast, vast number of our clients, and I've worked on solving some really big technical problems that our customers have. And I believe really strongly, with something like a modular workflow build and execution engine, we will solve some of the key challenges we have in that workflow lifecycle. And that is all the way from designing the workflow, building the workflow, being able to test it, qualify it, deploy it even. So we're looking at workflows almost in the same way we look at software, like a software development lifecycle. How do I introduce things like continuous integration and continuous deployment? How do I ensure that my changes are captured and verified and approved by a human? How do I deploy this out into other systems we have between dev, val, and prod? So the modular workflow piece is the first step in really bringing that completely machine interpretable layer for our interactions that not only AI can use, but a scientist with a few skills in software development can use. You can write scripts, you can generate these programmatically. So I'm going to show you what the modular workflow builder can be used for. And this is really building from reusable building blocks, components that allow you to build your workflows much more quickly through massive reusability of things you've already done before. So I'll hit play on the video. This one's a bit longer, so if you blink, you won't sort of miss it. So in here, I'm creating a new workflow template. In that workflow template, I'm going to bring in some reusable tasks from a library of tasks. So there's a library of previously configured tasks that could be qualified, they could be validated and ready to go, and I'm bringing them into my workflow. And to those tasks, I can define things like the inputs and outputs. So how does data move between each of the things in that workflow? I can define things like conditions. If this thing is true, skip that step. I don't need to do it. So branching logic in my workflow. So it's not always linear. It's not always I do thing A, thing B, thing C. Sometimes I want to do thing A, thing B, and D. I don't need to do thing C because it's not appropriate. So we can build in these conditions, we can build in this logic, and it's highly configurable by the end user. But we try to take all the things today that we do through very clever background tables in a spreadsheet and make them features, make them parts of the user experience. So it's easier to do things that today can be quite complex, but become quite simple here with a couple of ticks in a checkbox. The workflow is generated as a flowchart, almost like a Visio. So you can see what you've configured, how those different steps relate to each other, how the data is moving between the steps. And if I'm honest, my vision for this going forward is that I would interact with this view, personally, my personal opinion, is that I would interact with this view much more than I interact with the sort of longer form view, because I would love to be able to see, I'm going to do this thing and then this thing and then this thing. Actually, if I don't need to do that thing, I'm going to skip it. And then I could drill down into the details of those components and modify them. So this brings a huge amount of flexibility to the workflow builder, but also to the person executing, because we can build in those business rules, that logic, in a very simple way. The next step on our sort of orbital lab loop is thinking about how we execute that. So I've built a workflow. I've taken some reusable components. I've decided what data is going to move in and out of each one. I've maybe done some tweaking, some reconfiguration, and now I want to execute my workflow. And in this video, we will take a workflow template that has been created by another user or by the current user. It's sort of neither here nor there. Sometimes the persona is the same, as we know. And I'm going to execute that workflow. And down the right-hand side, I've got a simple navigation so I can move between the different steps in the workflow and I can see their current status. I've got things like interaction with inventory, so we can tie in to the other modules of Polar, query inventory, write to inventory. I can very easily see where I've got to in my workflow, what progress that I've made and what is outstanding. One of the great things about this, and Scott alluded to this earlier in his roadmap presentation, is that this allows collaboration just by design. So multiple operators can be working in the same workflow on the same task at the same time. The only restriction at the moment is the individual step. So if you're working on one individual part of a task, that's soft locked to you for the time being, because we're going to iron out some of the data loss and conflict issues before we make that available to everybody, because we appreciate nobody wants to risk that, right? But at the moment, really granular down to editing the same task at the same time. And what does that give us? So we've now got these machine interpretable workflows that are modular, they're reusable components. What do we get for that as users? Well, actually, we have our AI interface built into our platform, which can actually interrogate the data sets that we're generating through executing these workflows. So I'm going to go through and do multiple runs, I'm going to execute multiple experiments, and then maybe I just want to ask, what was the trend across these experiments? What did I learn from this? What should I do differently next time? Or can you generate me a report for this, please? And it will be generated for you. So something that possibly took weeks, now takes, a minute or so. So in this video, which once again is a bit of a short one, I'm just going to show using natural language, asking please generate a report based on this experimental information that I've captured. And it gives you a table with summarized results. It talks about the trends. It talks about what you learned from doing that work. And the important thing here is this is really closing the loop on that overarching lab loop, because you've started thinking about what you're going to do and why you're going to do it and how you're going to do it. But then crucially, you've actually done it, which I know Sean was saying is the bit that's sort of like, but you actually have to do it. You do have to do it. And then at the end, you get a really quick, easy summary of what you've done. And this really brings us back then to being able to make decisions. So based on what I've done in my workflows, how can I make decisions to guide what I do next? So as I said right at the beginning, a platform that learns from what you're doing. And the next time you do it, you can do it faster. You can do it better. And the next steps on our journey with this, and I'll talk about the roadmap in just a moment, the next steps on our journey for this are really making it more prescriptive, suggesting the next best action, being more deeply embedded across the platform as opposed to just a singular interface. And that will really bring the AI element into every aspect of what you're doing in the platform to speed up your experience and accelerate what you do. There's one more video, and this is the one that I was dreaming about last night. So enjoy this one. But this is a demonstration of MCP connectivity into our platform. Now, we work with customer partners in pretty much everything we're doing in the next generation platform program. And we're doing a lot of things in collaboration with partners, some of whom are in the room today, and we're collaborating together to ensure that we are building something that people want to use and will be valuable to people. So one of the things that we've started looking at recently, as I said, is MCP. So a way of being able to connect some external AI tool into IDBS Polar. So Polar becomes one of the tools or sources available to AI. And the example here would be a scientist that has a certain proclivity for using Claude. It's just their preference. They don't really want to use either, what IDBS is embedded into our platform for whatever reason, or, as I said, it's actually connected to the LLM that they use internally that's trained on their data, and they want to use that interface. So the separate components of this really are the interface, the LLM, the kind of client-side MCP piece, and then the MCP server, and then Polar and the other tools available to that MCP server. Here we're saying you could take Claude as a kind of publicly available AI tool and connect it into Polar. And you can ask questions about your Polar data from Claude using something called MCP, which is essentially that connectivity between what's going on in other places and your AI tool. So I'll play the video, it's quite short. This is at the POC level at the moment, so it's something we've just POC'd for the time being to kind of prove that we can do it. It was very straightforward, it was very quick. We ask a question of Claude about our recent experiments. It will list out the recent things that we've been working on. From the list of things that we've been working on, we can then ask for more information. So follow-up questions like, from the experiments that you've listed out, tell me more about that one, and it will give you more information. So it will say, well, actually, based on that experiment, based on the assay acceptance criteria for the assay that you were doing, these samples passed, these samples failed. Do you want me to tell you more about why that might have happened? So a normal conversational interaction with AI through Claude as the interface and the LLM in this case, but of course they are separate components, and it gives you an answer. Now, why is this valuable? Why wouldn't we just use this instead of embedding something into our platform? Well, this also has its own limitations for this kind of context, this kind of use case, in terms of being grounded in real relevance and the scientific context of it being inside Polar. But I think MCP opens the door to much broader things like agentic AI. So when we start thinking about actually having agents and agents being able to autonomously work in the Polar platform, for example, we really want MCP to be one of the parts of that story. So we're doing this in parallel. This is not an either or. This is MCP on top of what we're doing with our own embedded AI. And this really closes that lab loop. It allows you to ideate, design, execute, capture, analyze your data, and then make your decisions through to the next loop of that lab loop. Now, I'm sorry, that's all the videos. So I know we like watching a little video, but that was all of them. So I am just going to talk for another 15 minutes. Thank you. And, but I want to focus on what we're doing next, because I think that's really important. So where are we today? The now column. What are we doing next and what's coming later? And these are relatively short-term goals for us. So when I start talking about now and next, we're not talking about sort of years, right? We're really talking about the stuff that is actively being worked on to productionize right now, in the now, and then moving forward, those are going to be subsequent iterations of that in the coming 12 to 18 months sort of time frame. So we're really trying to keep this as succinct as possible. And the way we're doing that is by delivering iterative value. So looking at the highest value use cases, looking at how we would support those and delivering on them. And how best do we do that as a vendor? By working with our customers. So the only way we can identify the highest value use cases for our customers is to work with them. So customer partnerships are really high on our agenda. And I think in terms of making the whole AI hype not just hype, it's critical to make sure that we don't just deliver something with AI because we can. We actually do it because it's going to bring the most value to our customers. And AI is not the answer to everything, as we know. So right now, we've got the things I've shown you today. So we've got our search with our summaries, our comparisons. We're looking at MCP. We've got our workflow builder, our execution engine, links into inventory, for example. We've got a flavor of spreadsheet in our modular workflow. And then, of course, in our data platform, we're looking at that unstructured data as a first port of call. Why have we started with unstructured? Well, because as it's been discussed multiple times just in these sessions today, that is at the moment a little bit of a challenge for our customers. It's the unstructured data we're finding harder to reuse. The structured stuff, such as some of the data that comes from our advanced spreadsheet, we can already get a lot of value and usage out of it, but it really is that unstructured stuff that is a bit tricksy. And lots of our customers have a large percentage of their data that is in that unstructured form. And then later, we expand this out. So more data available for AI, of course, everything ultimately. Making our AI tool inside Polar more multimodal. So you know today when you go to ChatGPT, to Claude, it's like you can upload a voice prompt. You know, why not? And then the stuff you get out of it at the other end, you know, files, it can generate you new things, PowerPoint decks, you know, it can generate you charts, images, everything. That's exactly where we're aiming for with our embedded Polar AI solution. And of course, with MCP, we want to bring real value through using MCP beyond a POC to our customers. So where that is appropriate, and of course, supporting agentic AI in the future, we can do that. And then finally, with the later, we want to look really at omni-channel assistance for Polar AI. So when I say omni-channel, I mean it's available not just in one interface, but anywhere you're working. So think sort of Clippy back in the day in Microsoft Word, but a little bit nicer. Clippy with a little glow up. And not quite as annoying. Looks like you're writing a letter. Okay, I don't care. So we're going there. So multiple places within the platform where AI will help your workflow. It will speed you up, essentially. And then for the modular workflow and data platform layers, it really is moving to that more advanced logic, more business rules, optimizing the user experience for new ways of working, which are evolving as we speak. And for the data platform, of course, as I said, really introducing more of the platform into that evolved data platform to make it all available for AI use cases. Now, where we want to go with this is fairly aspirational. We don't downplay how big a challenge we have on our hands. But I think at IDBS, we're almost uniquely positioned to get this right. With the customer partners that we have, the experience we have in compliance and working in this industry, and with the technologies that are now available to us, we really can get this right with regards to becoming, you know, the most trusted compliant AI vendor in our industry. So what does that mean later for AI? Well, we're not just going from the lab assistant piece. As I mentioned, we want to move into the suggestion, you know, do this thing next based on this data. You know, it would be better if you optimize this parameter to within this range rather than that range. And then, of course, the automation piece. And we're getting towards the holy grail, right? So people want, as Sean described earlier, to kind of press a button and then go and have lunch. Come back and stuff is just done, right? It's kind of the way people want to be able to work. So their brain and their skills are only needed for things that specifically require their brain and their skills, all the things they've trained to do, you know, all the time they spent learning how to be an excellent scientist. So the automation piece is really where we start seeing, you know, the payback in huge multipliers. You know, the dividends will be large. There's a long journey to get there. So before we get to the automate and the act, where things start doing things for us, like reporting and workflows and checking for compliance gaps and errors and things like that, we really want to make sure we're doing it properly. You know, we want to make sure that your data is available, it's grounded, you get relevant answers, it's trustworthy. And that's why we're taking this iterative approach with delivery of our AI tools. But it's why we're also taking a two-pronged approach between inside the platform and outside with MCP. Because we know different customers, different sizes, different maturities, different use cases also have different needs from AI and different appetites for adoption as well. So what's the takeaway from this? So I think ultimately we are building a platform that is built for AI. So there was a question earlier today, I think during Scott's presentation, that was leaning towards what's the appetite for complete rebuild versus sort of adding things on. And the approach that we're really taking with this is rather than rebuilding everything from scratch, we're looking at complementary evolutions that we can add adjacent to what we already have. So when we talk about the new data platform, it is an additional layer above what we already have today that will bring that more AI appropriate, you know, scalable, layer of data for our customers, as opposed to saying we're going to throw away what we've got at the moment and we're going to build something completely new. Similarly, we really want to reduce that manual effort that people are putting into using platforms like ours. And that greater than 50% bar has been set. It's quite high. I didn't set it, but actually I think it's a good thing. I think we really should be aiming for at least that 50%, challenge accepted. And I really think, from speaking to our customers, that it's something that needs to be done. It needs to happen. You know, there are so many pressures, not just within the industry itself, but geopolitically. There is such a landscape of pressure on the environment at the moment that actually something needs to help us move faster with getting drugs to market. And of course, as I've mentioned a couple of times, we want AI that you can use and defend. We don't want AI that you're not trusting. It's kind of no different to today when people use shadow AI, where they don't have an approved AI tool within their organization, but they just nip over to an incognito browser window and ask ChatGPT and then copy and paste some things over. You know, we don't want to be at that level of AI usage. We want this to be embraced. We want it to be something that is part of everyone's daily work. So where does that leave us? Oh, I see that Eliza was checking her watch. Okay, I'm sorry. Where does that leave us? It's the last slide. You're all good. It's the last slide. Is to say thank you. Thank you to everyone that's attended. Thank you for the presentations that have happened so far. They've been really insightful. And thank you to our customer partners for your input and helping us drive our vision and our roadmap. It really is built on what our customers need the most. And that's what we're going to continue to do. I've never actually worked with as many customers and as closely as I have over the last year or so to talk about some really difficult topics. We're holding some quite visionary sessions at the moment, like describe your lab in 2031. And people look at you like, what's wrong with you? But actually, that's what we're building for. We're not building for the lab right this moment. We're building for what are your biggest problems going to be in 5-10 years' time. So if you would like to be included in that, if you would like to have sessions with us, become a partner in any of our programs that I've mentioned across Modular Workflow, AI, Data Platform, please do get in touch, contact your IDBS representative, come and find me while you're here today, and please do, if you can, share your feedback. The QR code there, it's really short, and I've broken it down, so it literally is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and then you are done, and each one is just a multiple choice question. So it's really quick to fill in. It will help us shape our roadmap and help us make sure we're making the right choices. And with that, I will stop talking to give you time to ask any questions that you have.
Question here in front.
So one of the AI things that I get asked a lot is, can we use that information in your source of truth, science source of truth? We have multiple, so we want to pull together multiple sources from within our company. Will this platform be able to be, I don't totally know what I'm talking about. Will this platform be able to be included with others at the same time on our own agent thing? That's it.
I guess the short answer is yes. So based on what you described, I think Polar becomes one of many tools that are accessible to AI. I think the really important thing there is the traceability and the kind of understanding of the reasoning and how it got to the answer that you got. And I think a really good example out in the open today in sort of production usage by people today is the way that things like Claude Cowork does this and actually allows you to connect into other tools, and you can create agents and skills and things like that. But it documents every single task or activity that it's done, and it makes that available to you so you can see what was included in the context window, what was used to make that decision, what was the decision that was made. And that's exactly what we're aiming for within our platform in terms of the traceability, understanding what was done and why and what data was used. But when we become part of your bigger ecosystem, then it becomes down to how you are doing that traceability, that auditability. We'll provide that data to you, but it's how you will collate that and how you will use that. But I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility. I guess a follow-up question, a follow-up question would be, how do you do that today? So how do you govern the AI that you're using today?
We have large teams that are working on this within our, we have large teams that are working on this within our company, which is why I don't have to know about it. So.
Yeah, sure.
But that's the direction. So we're really, just just from my role, I'm asked, hey, how can we use the information that we have to be included in the design teams?
Sure. I think it's important to remember the latest FDA and EMA guidance on that, about humans being in the loop. The human is still essentially responsible for the decision and what came about. I mean, capturing things like prompt, outcome, context would be a good starting point for that. If you can capture what was included in terms of what data was looked at, what the references are, so the files that came back with links with references, that's a good way of capturing that traceability. And you're actually the same thing within our platform too.
I'm sure we are extremely traceable. I just don't know what that is.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no worries.
Nick, we're just going to take the next question over here before Aristotle's.
Okay, sure. Hi.
I've used ChatGPT in the multiple pilots just to make sure I get the right terminology, but I wanted to ask you about control systems. So basically how the prompt is interpreted. Could you maybe give us some insights of what you've done in your system? So how you interpret the prompts and also how you're doing the outputs. Do you give some helpful hints or maybe some efforts from agentic AI bots myself? I was just thinking it'd be nice to pick your brain about what works on this one.
Yeah, sure. No, absolutely. This is a bigger conversation that maybe we can have as well, for sure. For us, we're in the early phases of this, and we've been ensuring that we've got really tight system prompts that really control what outputs can be, what they can't be, the tone of things, those kinds of things. But we're also working with sort of frontier models, right? So we're working with we can plug in Claude instead of something else, etc. And that brings some of the format of the output and things like that as well that we don't necessarily control too much. We just say, well, if you use Claude, your output will look a bit like this. If you use a Mistral model or a Llama model, it will look slightly different. So one of the things that we've been focusing on recently is around sort of context engineering and making sure that we can fix what context is included in the window and therefore what will be used to generate the answer and things like that. So we can have a conversation about that and what we've learned from that activity, but it does make a huge difference on what output you get, based on how you manage the input. But we've done a fair bit of evaluation on that so far, but what we've got so far has come out quite well in terms of what you get, the relevance, what people would expect. We're doing customer partnerships and customer evaluations at the moment, where we're asking customers to kind of say, what's your prompt, what was your expected output, and what was the actual output, and then sort of look at the delta and help us understand how we need to tighten up what we've done in the back end of our AI tool to make sure that it's giving them the appropriate output. Cool, no problem.
Okay, Aristotle, you had a question?
If we have time for it, but I guess I was just going to say, looking at the presentation, it seems like we're using tons of different models. Our customers are experimenting with so many different models. You were just touching on it right there, but so how exactly does Polar help with contextualization of data? Because I know everybody's generating tons of data. They're like, I want to put this into all of our AI models that we're testing out. How exactly does Polar contextualize?
That's a great question. So our data platform ingests not just data, but obviously we have metadata, we have relationships. We're actually working on a canonical data model, a core data model across the platform, which I referenced in my sort of data layer slide. And that helps bring that context. So through those relationships, through ontologies, which we also touched on this morning, once there's more than one standard, there isn't a standard, but we need to pick a standard. The ontology to bring those terms relevance, scientific relevance, and then the data models. They're kind of the ways that we're bringing that context together, is by linking that data together, ensuring we're using standard terminology. When it comes to different models, we are still fairly early on in using different models and evaluating them. So we've used a Llama model from AWS Bedrock. We've used a Claude model, Sonnet 4.6, I think it was, that we used. But at the moment, for our internal tool, we are evaluating models at the moment and what that looks like in terms of different outputs. But obviously, when a customer brings their own LLM, when it comes to things like MCP, they'll be subject to whatever they've done with regards to testing their outputs and the relevance and things like that. But we're grounded in scientific data in our platform through that data model, which brings that relevance.